We are constantly told that America's housing crisis is a simple problem. There aren't enough homes. If only more units were built in high-demand areas like coastal California or the Northeast Corridor, the narrative goes, prices would fall and millions of aspiring homeowners could finally access the market. While this story is compelling in its simplicity, it is dangerously incomplete. The reality of the housing crisis is far more complex, encompassing economic geography, historical policy choices, income inequality, and the collapse of opportunity in large parts of the country. Consider San Francisco, where the median home price has hovered around $1.5 million in recent years, driven by restrictive zoning laws, a hyper-concentrated tech economy, and decades of underbuilding relative to population growth. Similar trends are visible across New York, Boston, and Los Angeles, where prices far exceed the national median of approximately $428,000 as of 2024. On the surface, these numbers make it easy to conclude that the problem is purely supply. But when we look beyond the coastal bubbles, an entirely different picture emerges, one that challenges the scarcity narrative. Across the United States, thousands of homes remain standing, habitable yet vacant, sometimes for decades. Cities like Gary, Indiana, and East St. Louis, Illinois, present a startling contrast to coastal markets. Here, homes can be had for less than the price of a daily latte, or even for $1 through municipal programs designed to revitalize neighborhoods. Yet these houses remain empty, falling into disrepair, becoming magnets for blight, vandalism, and decay. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, as of 2023, there were over 18 million vacant housing units across the country, and a significant portion of these are in areas suffering from economic decline, high unemployment, and declining population. The American housing crisis is, therefore, not merely a problem of shelter. It is a crisis of opportunity, infrastructure, and economic viability. When a community loses its jobs, schools, hospitals, and services, homes lose their value, not because they are physically inadequate, but because the social and economic ecosystem that gives them meaning has collapsed. These areas, often referred to by economists and urban planners as economic dead zones, reveal a forgotten side of the American housing paradox. Affordability exists, but the incentives to live and work there are missing. This paradox has deep roots. Post-World War II federal housing policies, such as redlining and discriminatory lending practices, concentrated wealth and opportunity in suburban white communities, while depriving black and minority neighborhoods of investment. Decades later, the consequences remain visible. Inner cities and Midwestern towns suffer from population loss, declining property values, and eroded tax bases, leaving countless homes abandoned. A study by the Urban Institute found that nearly 40% of neighborhoods that were redlined in the 1930s remain economically disadvantaged today. This historical legacy amplifies the modern housing crisis by creating a geography where supply exists, but opportunity does not. Meanwhile, in high-demand markets, affordability is sharply constrained. Rising mortgage rates, which reached historic highs of over 7% in 2023, combined with wage stagnation for most Americans, have placed homeownership out of reach for millions. First-time buyers now face a median down payment requirement of over $85,000 in many metropolitan areas, not to mention closing costs and property taxes that can exceed $10,000 annually. According to the National Association of Realtors, the percentage of first-time homebuyers has declined steadily over the past 2 decades, falling from 40% of the market in 2005 to just under 30% in 2024. Yet despite these challenges, there are signs of hope. Some cities have begun to rethink zoning and land use regulations to allow for higher density construction, accessory dwelling units, and mixed-use development, which can increase housing availability without dramatically changing the character of neighborhoods. Programs such as Opportunity Zones, which offer tax incentives for private investment in economically distressed communities, have also attempted to bridge the gap between vacant housing and economic revitalization. Furthermore, technology-driven platforms are beginning to make housing data more transparent, helping prospective buyers identify undervalued markets and make informed decisions. Even in areas historically considered unlivable, innovative approaches are showing promise. Gary, Indiana, for example, has launched initiatives to turn abandoned houses into community assets, including urban farms, small business incubators, and affordable housing cooperatives. East St. Louis has partnered with private developers and nonprofit organizations to stabilize neighborhoods and create incentives for new residents and businesses. While these efforts are localized and slow-moving, they demonstrate that the housing crisis is not immutable. It is shaped by policy, investment, and community engagement. Data from the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University shows that nearly 37 million households in the U.S. are cost-burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on housing. Among renters, the situation is even more acute, with over 20 million households paying more than 50% of their income toward rent. These numbers illustrate a dual crisis. While millions of homes stand empty in some regions, millions of people struggle to afford shelter in others. The challenge is not simply to build more houses, but to align supply with opportunity and mobility. The concept of economic geography is key to understanding this misalignment. Coastal tech hubs thrive because they concentrate high-paying jobs, venture capital, and educational institutions in dense, well-connected clusters. Interior cities with declining industries, in contrast, lack these growth engines, making even inexpensive housing unattractive to new residents. This imbalance drives both the scarcity narrative in affluent areas and the abandonment in struggling regions. Policy interventions that ignore this geographic dimension risk repeating past mistakes, building homes where people cannot afford to live or where economic opportunity is absent. The housing market also reflects broader societal inequalities. Black, Latino, and Indigenous families are disproportionately affected by both high costs and scarcity in high-demand markets, while also being overrepresented in communities with abandoned or undervalued homes. Addressing the housing crisis, therefore, requires confronting systemic inequities, investing in education, infrastructure, healthcare, and economic development, and creating incentives for migration and job creation in regions with surplus housing. Experiences from other countries provide further insights. In Germany, for example, housing markets in large cities are regulated to prevent speculative price surges, while subsidies and rent controls help maintain affordability. Meanwhile, in Japan, housing depreciation is recognized as normal, leading to policies that encourage redevelopment and repopulation of underused urban areas. Lessons from abroad suggest that solving America's housing crisis requires not just more construction, but thoughtful regulation, targeted investment, and a recognition that homes are only valuable when communities thrive. Technology and innovation can also play a role. Data analytics can identify underutilized housing and connect it with demand, while modular and prefabricated construction methods can reduce costs and speed delivery. Financial innovations, such as shared equity programs and community land trusts, can lower barriers for first-time buyers while ensuring long-term affordability. Remote work has expanded the range of feasible locations, yet economic opportunity still dictates where people can realistically live and thrive. Policymakers, investors, and community leaders face a delicate balancing act, boosting supply where it is needed, revitalizing communities with abundant vacant homes, and ensuring that economic opportunity follows housing availability rather than the other way around. In the end, the U.S. housing crisis is not a single problem with a single solution. It is a web of interrelated challenges involving supply, affordability, income inequality, historical policy failures, and geographic economic disparities. Recognizing this complexity is essential for crafting solutions that are effective and sustainable. Affordable homes will not solve the crisis alone. We must also invest in the social, economic, and civic infrastructure that gives those homes meaning. The forgotten half of the American housing paradox, the economic dead zones of the interior, illustrates the stakes. There are thousands of homes that could shelter families today, but without jobs, schools, healthcare, and transportation, these homes are effectively worthless. At the same time, coastal cities continue to see prices soar beyond the reach of ordinary workers, highlighting a different but equally pressing challenge, aligning housing availability with real opportunity. Ultimately, hope exists in understanding the crisis holistically. Policies that consider both housing supply and economic opportunity, combined with community-driven initiatives and private sector innovation, can transform vacant houses into thriving homes, revitalize neighborhoods, and offer pathways to ownership for those who have been priced out. The crisis is not inevitable. It is a reflection of choices, priorities, and investments. With thoughtful action, the narrative of scarcity and exclusion can be replaced with one of opportunity and growth. Americans can have both affordable homes and vibrant communities, but only if we are willing to see beyond the coastal headlines and address the deeper systemic challenges that underlie our housing markets. We're always told the American housing crisis is simple. We just need more homes. But that story is only half true. Yes, places like San Francisco and New York have homes selling for over $1 million, driven by zoning rules and huge demand. But look deeper. Across the U.S., there are over 18 million vacant homes, many in places like Gary, Indiana, or East St. Louis, where houses sometimes cost less than a coffee, even $1. These homes aren't empty because they're broken. They're empty because opportunity left. Jobs disappeared, schools closed, hospitals shut down, and entire communities fell into what experts call economic dead zones. So while some cities face extreme shortages, others have more houses than people. The real crisis isn't just a lack of buildings. It's a lack of places where people can build a future. But there is hope. Cities are rethinking zoning, communities are rebuilding abandoned neighborhoods, and new programs are helping first-time buyers find real opportunities. With smart policy and investment, vacant houses can become real homes again. Make sure you subscribe. Your support helps bring more truth and more hope to topics that matter.